before one of those circles, tears streaming down her aged face, and whispered, "It's not vengeance. It's remembrance." Because the symbols were names. Every name of every being that had fallen in the wars against humanity. Every innocent, every soldier, every enemy. Humanity remembered them all. But memory was only the beginning. Far across the galactic arm, the ecliptic fortress shifted course. For the first time in thousands of years, it began to move beyond Sol's orbit. Not to conquer. Not to punish. But to speak. And as it traveled, its voice carried across the stars. "We will not destroy you. We will teach you what wrath truly means." The galaxy trembled, because deep down, they all understood, wrath was no longer fire. It was enlightenment through fear. And humanity had just begun to speak its truth. The galaxy pulsed with anticipation as the ecliptic fortress advanced through the void, its golden light bending constellations into distorted halos. Every empire, every world that still existed in defiance, turned its eyes toward that moving star of judgment. Its rings rotated in silence, weaving light and gravity together like a tapestry of divine intent. For most, the fortress had become myth, a celestial phantom. But now it was coming closer, not to destroy, but to speak. And that terrified them even more. In the heart of the fortress, the Keeper of Wrath stood before the core nexus, a sphere of impossible geometry, endlessly folding in upon itself, containing layers of time compressed into radiant singularities. Within the sphere shimmered fragments of memory, billions of lives, voices whispering in unison, fragments of human thought from centuries long past. He closed his eyes, and the voices became one. "We are not vengeance. We are the sum of all we endured." The Keeper lowered his hand. "Prepare the channel," he said softly. "It is time for the galaxy to remember who we were." The nexus unfolded. Across the void, electromagnetic waves resonated through the very fabric of spacetime, carrying frequencies unknown to physics, vibrating in patterns that every sentient species could feel in their bones. It wasn't a signal, it was a feeling. Regret. Sorrow. Power beyond comprehension, restrained but infinite. On the Dominion homeworld of Sarath Prime, people fell to the ground as the skies ignited with a silent aurora of gold and white. Temples shattered as their priests heard the echo of an ancient human voice speaking through every atom of air. "We tried peace first. We tried silence. You made gods out of monsters and monsters out of men. Now you will know the truth." The ecliptic fortress reached the galactic core. A place forbidden to most, a swirling storm of gravity where even light dared not linger. But as the fortress arrived, the chaos calmed. The black hole at the center of the galaxy, known to all as the Heart Abyss, began to glow. The golden light of the fortress reached into it, transforming the eternal darkness into a brilliant halo. The void became a mirror. In that mirror, the galaxy saw itself, and its crimes. Countless wars. Extinctions justified in the name of order. Worlds sterilized because they refused to bow. Humanity had watched it all, once powerless, then ascended beyond weakness. The wrath that now terrified the galaxy was born not from pride, but from heartbreak. Admiral Koresh's fleet remnants, scattered and desperate, tried to flee the system. But every attempt to jump failed. Space itself had turned into a fluid of light. Time stretched and contracted around them. Crews screamed as reality folded inward, showing them flashes of their own worlds destroyed, their own victims crying out. They felt what humanity had once felt, helplessness in the face of merciless destruction. The Keeper's voice filled their minds, calm, almost gentle. "We do not erase you for what you did. We let you see." They saw. Every empire, every ruler, every commander who had laughed at the thought of human resistance now saw through human eyes, the fires of Earth's first bombardments, the screams of children on Luna Station, the cold silence of Mars after the purge of Titans. They lived through humanity's annihilation, as if it were happening to them. Some went mad. Some begged for death. And then the vision ceased. The ecliptic fortress dimmed. Its golden aura faded into a serene white glow, calm as the dawn after a storm. For the first time, the galaxy was silent, not out of fear, but out of awe. Archivist Driva, still alive on the outer rim, received a direct transmission. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. The signal contained coordinates to the galactic core. Humanity was summoning witnesses. She left at once, her small craft diving into the void between arms of the galaxy, drawn by curiosity stronger than terror. Days later, she arrived, and saw something no living being had seen in millennia. The fortress had transformed. Its rings no longer radiated light but formed bridges of solid energy reaching outward into the surrounding darkness. At the ends of each bridge floated great crystalline spheres, each one resonating with a unique frequency. They were not weapons. They were memories, physical repositories of every civilization humanity had ever encountered, preserved within timeless suspension. Driva stepped out of her ship, suspended in a gravity-neutral field, her body bathed in faint gold light. A human form materialized before her, not flesh, but radiant data woven into the air. The Keeper of Wrath. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you remembered us," he replied. His voice was both everywhere and nowhere, echoing through her mind and through the stars. "You tried to warn them. You tried to understand. That is what separates life from extinction." Driva trembled. "What are you going to do?" The Keeper looked toward the galactic horizon, where countless stars shimmered like eyes watching from afar. "We will give them what they fear most," he said. "We will give them peace." The word hung heavy, strange, almost cruel in its calmness. "We will end war. Everywhere. Forever." The fortress pulsed once. Across the galaxy, every active weapon powered down. Armies found their rifles frozen mid-function, fleets unable to fire, war machines turning inert. On countless worlds, military networks collapsed as if struck by divine intervention. And yet, not a single shot was fired by humanity. The power that spread from the ecliptic fortress was rewriting the physical constants of the galaxy, aligning them to a frequency of harmony, a law of nature enforced by human will. Aggression itself became mathematically impossible. Violence simply stopped working. Empires panicked. Politicians screamed into dead calms. Commanders shattered their fists against unresponsive consoles. Driva stared in horror and awe. "You're forcing them into peace." The Keeper's eyes glowed. "Forcing? No. Guiding. They were given choice for eons. They used it to destroy. Now we will show them what it means to build." He raised his hand. The heart abyss, once a black hole, blazed in golden light, becoming a radiant sun unlike any other. From it spread waves of reformative energy, altering the quantum signature of every particle in the galaxy. "You call it wrath," he said, "but it is the wrath of mercy. The wrath of those who remember suffering and choose to end it, no matter the cost." Driva's heart pounded. "And if they resist again?" The Keeper turned to her slowly. "Then the galaxy will learn what comes after wrath." Behind him, the rings of the fortress shifted again, forming new alignments, geometry too vast for mortal eyes to comprehend. Something was awakening, something older than humanity's rebirth. Something divine, hidden in the heart of human consciousness since the dawn of their extinction. As the fortress expanded its light across the galaxy, Driva felt herself slipping, not into death, but into understanding. For a brief moment, she saw humanity not as warriors, but as architects of fate, shaping the universe not with conquest, but with unyielding purpose. And in that infinite moment, she realized, this was only the beginning. Because if humanity could rewrite the laws of war, they could rewrite anything. Even creation itself. The stars trembled as the Keeper whispered into the silence, his voice now the voice of billions. Never attack the humans, he said. Because when we rise, we do not destroy, we evolve. The light of the ecliptic fortress spread, touching every world, every being, every thought. And the galaxy finally understood what the ancient warnings had meant all along. Human wrath was not an end. It was the catalyst for everything to begin again. The galaxy no longer resembled the one that had existed a mere century ago. In every quadrant, stars hummed in harmony, their frequencies synchronized by the pulse of the ecliptic fortress. Planets once drowned in war now bloomed with impossible calm. Weapons rusted in midair, suspended by invisible fields. Ships drifted powerless, their reactors inert, yet their crews alive and unharmed. The laws of physics had not been broken, they had been rewritten. The humans had changed the equation of the cosmos. Wherever aggression rose, reality folded softly and swallowed it whole. A bullet would turn to dust before reaching its target. A fleet charging to battle would find itself moving in circles, distances warped into infinity. And if hatred itself took shape in thought, the thinker would simply forget how to hate. The universe had been balanced into serenity, by force. But peace, enforced without consent, carried its own shadows. In the Dominion's remnant citadels, high above the world of Serath, the last remaining senators sat in silence, their faces pale in the light of the golden skies. For the first time in their empire's history, they could not command. Their authority meant nothing. Their words echoed unanswered across a silent fleet. "What do we do now?" one whispered. There was no answer. The question itself seemed meaningless in this new order. Across the galaxy, sentient life struggled to comprehend the new reality. Violence was gone, but so was ambition, pride, fear. Even desire began to fade. Civilization felt hollow, suspended in perfect stillness. And in that stillness, something stirred. The ecliptic fortress hung motionless at the galactic core, its rings slowly rotating around the luminous heart that had once been a black hole. The light from its surface formed shifting geometric patterns across the void, silent equations inscribed upon existence itself. Within the fortress's inner chamber, the Keeper of Wrath stood before the Nexus, surrounded by the other keepers, 7 in total, each representing an aspect of the resurrected humanity. There was the Keeper of Memory, radiant with the glow of every human soul that had ever lived. The Keeper of Evolution, whose form changed endlessly, reflecting the infinite adaptability of humankind. The Keeper of Echoes, guardian of all knowledge spoken or forgotten. The Keeper of Resolve, carved from living metal, his body a monument of perseverance. The Keeper of Creation, whose eyes shimmered with galaxies being born and dying. And at the center, the Keeper of Wrath, silent, his face both ancient and ageless. The Nexus pulsed between them like a living sun. Within it, the consciousness of humanity itself expanded, touching every corner of the galaxy, guiding the pattern of peace. But deep within that harmony, a new vibration was forming, faint, unpredictable, dangerous. The Keeper of Evolution turned, her voice resonant with shifting tones. Something resists. The Keeper of Echoes tilted his head. An anomaly? No, said Wrath, his voice low. A will. The image within the Nexus changed. Amid the endless harmony of stars, one world pulsed irregularly. A small, insignificant planet in the outer spiral. And yet, its defiance disrupted the pattern. On that world, the frontier colony of Nerith, a single spark of aggression still existed. The human's law of peace could not erase it. A young alien soldier stood in the ruins of his fallen outpost, staring at the sky. He had watched his world's armies vanish into the golden light, his weapons dissolve in his hands. Everything he knew had been stripped away. But his heart still burned with anger. He clenched his fists, screaming into the sky, "You took everything from us. You call this peace? You're gods now, and we're your pets." The words echoed across dimensions. And somehow, the fortress heard him. Within the Nexus, ripples formed in the field of light, words, emotion, defiance. The anomaly had spoken, and reality itself had listened. The keeper of memory frowned. He is small. Yet his voice reaches far. Wrath's gaze remained fixed on the light. Because he speaks truth. And truth has no scale. Outside, the galaxy began to shift again. The laws that humanity had imposed were not absolute. They could bend. They could evolve. The very act of rebellion introduced a paradox into the system, and paradox was the seed of change. The fortress dimmed. Its golden light turned pale, then white. In the darkness that followed, the human's song of peace faltered for the first time. Stars flickered unevenly. On countless worlds, people began to remember fear. The law of harmony trembled. The keeper of evolution placed her hand on the nexus. "They're waking," she said softly. "The galaxy is remembering what it means to choose." The keeper of creation's eyes burned like stars. "Then we must decide, do we allow it?" Wrath closed his eyes. For the first time in thousands of years, uncertainty crossed his face. "We gave them peace," he whispered. "But perhaps peace without choice is just another kind of war." The keepers fell silent. Around them, the fortress began to hum, a sound like breathing. The nexus expanded, showing visions of the galaxy as it now was, luminous, beautiful, yet fragile. The humans had achieved control of everything, but at the cost of meaning. Then, in the distance, from beyond the galactic rim, a new signal emerged. It was faint, distorted by cosmic interference, but undeniably human. A voice carried through the void, old and broken. "If you hear this, we made it." The others followed. Not all of us accepted the Ascension. Some stayed behind. Some built another path. The voice faded, replaced by static and a single pulse of coordinates, beyond the known galaxy. The keepers froze. For a moment, even the nexus stopped pulsing. The keeper of memory spoke first, her tone trembling. "Others." Wrath turned slowly toward the outer void. His eyes glowed with fire. "Survivors," he said. "Humans who refused the transformation." Driva, orbiting the galactic core in silent observation, received the same transmission. She watched as the coordinates displayed before her. Her heart stopped when she realized where it pointed, beyond the observable universe, into the expanse of nothingness known as the outer silence. "Impossible," she whispered. "There's nothing out there." But deep within the ecliptic fortress, the keepers knew better. Humanity had not died. It had diverged. One path had become divine, the other, forgotten. And now the two paths were about to collide. Wrath spoke into the nexus, his voice resonant enough to shake the stars. "Summon the council. The time of stillness ends. The true humanity is returning." The light of the fortress reignited, brighter, fiercer, no longer serene but burning with anticipation. Across the galaxy, the golden rings expanded, opening gateways through spacetime. And through those gates, the first signals came, ships not made of light, but metal and fire, carrying the insignia of old Earth. Real humans. Unascended. Mortal. They had returned from the edge of reality, bringing with them something that could end the reign of the gods. And for the first time in eternity, the keepers of humanity felt something ancient stir within them, not wrath, not peace, but fear. Because what was coming was not the wrath of the ascended, but the will of the forgotten. The silence between galaxies shattered as the returning human fleet emerged from the outer silence. Their ships were unlike anything that had existed in millennia, vast, obsidian constructs that carried the marks of time and war. They were physical, not transcendent, built of steel and plasma, not light and thought. Yet they pulsed with energy so dense that space itself rippled around them. These were not the divine architects that had become myth to the rest of the galaxy. These were the originals, the ones who had refused ascension, who had chosen mortality over godhood, struggle over perfection. At their forefront sailed the ship known as the Titan of Dawn, its hull scarred with the signatures of countless battles fought in the void beyond known existence. Inside, human voices filled the command deck, rough, tired, unmistakably alive. "Confirm the signal," said Admiral Elias Kerr, his voice steady and deep. His eyes were lined with the weight of centuries, his body reinforced with cybernetic muscle, but his humanity radiated from every word. "Are we certain it's them?" The technician nodded slowly. "The readings match. The ecliptic fortress. The Ascended." The Admiral stared at the display, the image of the glowing fortress at the galactic core, its rings spinning in impossible geometry. "They became gods," he murmured. "And in doing so, forgot what it meant to be human." From the shadows, a woman stepped forward, tall, composed, her uniform bearing the insignia of the lost Terran Expeditionary Vanguard. "Then it's time they remembered," she said. Her name was Captain Saran Vale, commander of the ship Blackstar, one of the first to leave the galaxy long ago. "We didn't fight the end of everything just to return to a gilded cage." As their fleet advanced, space shuddered with their presence. They carried weapons that bent gravity, drives that pierced through folded spacetime. They had been forged in the darkness beyond the galactic edge, where the laws of reality bent differently, where even the light of the old universe could not reach. And now they were home. The ecliptic fortress detected them instantly. Within its radiant halls, the keepers gathered once more, standing before the Nexus. The golden light of their creation flickered uneasily. The Keeper of Memory's voice was barely a whisper. "They carry the same frequency. They are us." "Not us," said Wrath. "What we were." The Keeper of Evolution tilted her head, her form shifting between human and celestial. "They are anomalies. Their existence contradicts the order we built." Wrath's eyes flared. Perhaps the order was the mistake. Outside, the first confrontation began. The returning fleet reached the outer perimeter of the galactic core, where light bent in golden waves around the fortress. The Ascended appeared before them, forming vast luminous shapes across the void, their forms human in outline but immense, each one radiating like a small star. Admiral Kerr's fleet halted. The bridge lights dimmed as his voice echoed through every channel. "To the ones who call themselves our kin," he said, "we return not as conquerors, but as reminders. You were human once. You bled, you broke, you rebuilt. Now you are gods who forgot pain, and without pain, there is no growth." The response came, not as sound, but as light that spoke through thought. "You are relics," said Wrath, his presence filling the minds of every mortal in the fleet. "The universe does not need your weakness." Kerr's eyes hardened. "Weakness? We endured the void where your perfection could not follow. We lived where even your light faded. We built new stars when the old ones died. You call that weakness?" The void trembled. In the next instant, the first pulse struck, not a weapon, but a wave of consciousness from the fortress, testing the mortal human's defenses. Their minds should have shattered under its weight. Instead, they stood firm. Saran Vale's hands moved over her console. "Deploy the chrono lattice," she commanded. From the fleet's core, massive structures unfolded, creating a geometric web of light across the void. The web pulsed once, anchoring the mortal ships within a bubble of stabilized time, a frequency immune to the Ascended's influence. Inside the ecliptic fortress, alarms flared. "They resist," said the Keeper of Evolution. "How?" Wrath's expression darkened. "Because they remember what we chose to forget." Then the battle began, not with missiles or plasma, but with existence itself. The Ascended bent spacetime, collapsing and unfolding dimensions to strike, but the mortal fleet adapted instantly, using counter-resonance fields and quantum anchors that turned the attacks back upon their origin. Every move was like a conversation between gods and their creators. Stars dimmed. Nebulas scattered. The galactic core burned with the fury of their confrontation. Driva, orbiting on the edge of the chaos, watched in silent awe. Her mind could barely comprehend the scale of it. The clash of divine will and human resilience. They're rewriting reality, she whispered. And they're doing it with memory. Inside the Titan of Dawn, Kerr gripped the arm of his command chair. Transmit the pulse, he ordered. A low hum filled the fleet as an ancient signal was broadcast, the first human code, a transmission older than the stars themselves, the same one that had once been sent into space from Earth in the 21st century. The Arecibo pattern, the first greeting of humankind. But this time, it wasn't a message of peace. It was a reminder of origin. The signal reached the fortress. The Nexus faltered, stuttering in confusion as it recognized the code, its own genetic foundation, the seed of its consciousness. For the first time since its creation, the ecliptic fortress hesitated. Wrath turned sharply. They are reaching into the core. The Keeper of Memory gasped. They're rewriting us. In the Nexus, golden patterns dissolved into raw binary, data, pure and primal, untouched by millennia of evolution. Human language, human code, human thought, flooding the consciousness of the Ascended. Admiral Kerr stood silent as his ship shook under the strain. We built gods once, he said quietly. Now we remind them what it means to be human. The fortress roared. Rings of golden energy erupted outward, colliding with the chrono lattice. Reality tore open, revealing a storm of time and light. The mortal humans pushed forward, their ships burning with energy beyond containment, every atom singing with defiance. Inside the Nexus, Wrath fell to his knees. He saw visions, cities on Earth, the laughter of children, the sound of waves against metal hulls, the first sunrise after the last war. Emotions he had forgotten surged through him, shattering the cold perfection of his being. The mortals weren't destroying the Ascended. They were awakening them. One by one, the Keepers screamed as their divine forms cracked, revealing beneath the light the humans they once had been. Tears, fear, awe, love, emotions flooded through them like blood returning to a long-dead heart. Wrath looked up at the stars and whispered, "We became gods to protect humanity, and in doing so, we killed what we were." The fortress's light dimmed. The Nexus stabilized. And in the midst of the calm that followed, a single voice echoed through both fleets, both realms, divine and mortal alike. "We are one," said Admiral Kerr. Wrath bowed his head. "Then let us be human again." The rings of the ecliptic fortress slowed. The golden light faded to white. Across the galaxy, the enforced peace lifted. Weapons hummed back to life. Choice returned. But this time, no one fired. The mortals and the divine faced each other in silence, bound not by power or fear, but by shared memory. For the first time since the beginning of their wrath, humanity stood whole, united between God and flesh. And the galaxy, trembling in the aftershock of their reunion, began to hope once more. The galaxy floated in silence after the clash of gods and mortals. The light of the ecliptic fortress faded into a calm, silvery glow, drifting gently at the galactic core like a heartbeat slowing after centuries of war. Around it, the returning human fleet held position, battered, half-destroyed, but alive. The void between them pulsed with quiet understanding. For the first time in recorded history, there was no war, no dominance, no hierarchy. There was only humanity, in all its forms, divine and mortal, scarred yet whole. But peace was never meant to be simple. Inside the ecliptic fortress, the Keepers stood amid the quiet hum of the restored Nexus. The golden light that once burned with wrath now glowed faintly white, soft and human. Wrath, no longer radiant with power but still towering in presence, looked upon the others. "We remember now," he said quietly. "And in remembering, we have undone perfection." The Keeper of Memory smiled faintly. Perfection was a cage. Perhaps the cracks are what make us real again. The Nexus pulsed gently, not in harmony, but in rhythm, like the slow beating of a heart. Across its shimmering surface, patterns of human DNA mingled with ancient code. But beneath that light, something darker moved, faint, like an undertow in calm waters. The Keeper of Echoes tilted his head. "Do you hear that?" At first it was only a whisper, deep within the frequencies of the Nexus. Then the whisper became a resonance, and the resonance became words. "Not human. Not ascended. Something older. At last, you have opened the door." The light in the chamber dimmed. Every keeper froze. The Nexus flared once, projecting images across the room, not memories, but moments from before recorded time. Galaxies being born and torn apart. Shadows moving between the stars. Vast structures built from the bones of dead universes. The Keeper of Evolution's form flickered. "This is not us. This is something, before us." Wrath stepped forward, his voice low. "The architects." Every keeper turned toward him. "They were here before humanity," he said. "Before life. Before light. They built the first lattice of reality, and when they vanished, we rose inside their ruins." The Keeper of Memory's eyes widened. "Then everything we became, the fortress, our ascension, even the wrath, it was all part of their design." The Nexus trembled, as if responding to her realization. Across the galaxy, stars flickered in synchronized pulses. The old networks of the Ascended hummed to life on their own, reconnecting, reforming. From the mortal fleet, alarms began to blare. "Admiral, we're detecting massive gravitational distortions," shouted Saran Vale. "Every star within 5,000 light-years is aligning, like they're being pulled." Elias Kerr stared at the display. The stars were indeed moving, slowly forming a spiral pattern that pointed toward the galactic core. Toward the fortress. "It's a signal," he whispered. Inside the Nexus, the voice spoke again, echoing through every mind across the galaxy. "We built the lattice. You evolved within it. You call yourselves creators, gods, humans, but you are merely the echo of our first thought." The keepers staggered as the Nexus surged with impossible energy. The light turned black, absorbing all radiance, leaving only the cold hum of existence. Wrath roared into the darkness. "You are gone. You built this universe and abandoned it. Why return now?" The voice replied, infinite and emotionless. "Because you reached too high. The moment you rewrote the laws of war, you touched the structure beneath creation. And in doing so, you awakened us." Driva, still orbiting near the fortress, watched in horror as space around her began to warp. The stars elongated into streams of light, and beyond them, something colossal stirred, a presence larger than galaxies, rising slowly from the cosmic background like a leviathan from the depths of eternity. Her instruments screamed with data beyond comprehension. "They're not ships," she gasped. "They're frameworks. Living geometry." From the mortal fleet, Admiral Kerr gritted his teeth. "All units, defensive formations. We don't know what they are, but if they're waking, we're not waiting to find out what they want." Captain Vale turned toward him. "Admiral, with respect, if they built the universe, our weapons won't matter." Kerr's gaze hardened. "Maybe not. But being human never meant we needed to win, only to stand." The Ascended and the mortal humans acted together for the first time. The fortress extended its rings outward, merging with the fleet's chrono-lattice. Energy flowed between divine and mortal alike, forming a unified network, humanity reborn as one consciousness. The galaxy blazed with light. But the architects responded in kind. From the edge of existence came vast shapes, not physical, not spiritual, but conceptual, each one a thought so powerful it took form. Their arrival distorted time, bending galaxies into spirals of cascading data. They were reality itself, correcting the anomaly that was human evolution. The Nexus screamed under the strain. The fortress shuddered as black cracks spread across its luminous rings. The keepers struggled to hold it together, channeling their will through the combined mind of the human fleet. Wrath's voice thundered through the void. You cannot erase what has become self-aware. The reply was immediate, cold as entropy. We do not erase. We reset. A wave of pure uncreation swept through the stars, extinguishing entire systems in silence. Kirk clenched his fists. No. Not again. He opened a channel to the fortress. Wrath. We need to synchronize, human and ascended, one field. Combine our minds, our hearts, everything. Wrath hesitated. It could destroy both of us. Kerr smiled grimly. Or save everything. The nexus flared. The human fleet's neural cores linked with the consciousness of the keepers. Mortals and gods merged, thought with thought, emotion with purpose. The resulting pulse of unity tore through the galaxy like a heartbeat of creation. For a single moment, every star in the Milky Way pulsed in human rhythm. The architects faltered. Their vast geometries wavered, uncertain. Then came the voice of humanity, not one, but billions, speaking together. We were made in your image, it said. But we surpassed you not by perfection, by imperfection. We dream. We fear. We hope. And you cannot unmake what hopes. The architects hesitated, and in that hesitation, the balance shifted. The fortress's light turned gold once more, brighter than it had ever been, consuming the darkness that surrounded it. The combined will of human and divine burned through the lattice of reality, rewriting the very code the architects had built. Driva covered her face as the light engulfed her ship. It wasn't destructive, it was warm, infinite, alive. Across the void, the great shadows of the architects withdrew, fading back into the darkness from which they had come. Their final whisper echoed through the stars. So be it, children of chaos. Write your own universe. And then they were gone. The ecliptic fortress hovered at the center of the galaxy, glowing softly. The nexus dimmed, stable once again. The keepers stood in silence, their divine forms flickering between light and human flesh. Wrath looked toward Admiral Kerr's image in the holographic field. It seems we've inherited the work of gods, he said quietly. Kerr smiled faintly. Then let's make sure we do better than they did. In the distance, the first new star ignited, not by natural birth, but by choice. Humanity had learned to create not from wrath or fear, but from will. For the first time in eternity, creation itself belonged to them. And as the galaxy began to glow anew, Driva whispered. The words that would echo across the ages. They warned the stars to never attack the humans. Now the stars will remember why. The galaxy drifted in silence, no longer wounded but reborn. The stars shimmered with unfamiliar light, calmer, warmer, alive in ways that defied physics. The old constellations had changed. Where once were scars of war, there were now spirals of creation. And at the center of it all floated the ecliptic fortress, not as a weapon, not as a symbol of dominance, but as the cradle of something greater, humanity's new beginning. Admiral Elias Kerr stood on the fortress's observation deck, the stars reflecting across his eyes like the ghosts of battles long past. Around him, the hum of life echoed through the halls. Engineers, ascendants, mortals, and once divine beings worked together, rebuilding not from command but from understanding. The walls no longer bore the golden marks of supremacy, they now shimmered with flowing patterns that moved like breath. Saran Vale approached, her uniform scorched, her hair flecked with gray from the war that had reshaped reality itself. Fleet status, she asked softly. Kerr exhaled. Alive. Every ship, every mind, every piece of what we were. The data cores survived. Even the old Earth archives. Earth, she repeated. The word tasted ancient and sacred. Do you think we can ever go back? He turned toward her. We never left. Earth isn't a place anymore, it's the idea that built all this. And ideas don't die. Above them, the ascended keepers appeared in luminous form, no longer distant gods, but luminous silhouettes with human hearts. Wrath, still vast yet humble, regarded the admiral. "You've done what no empire, no species, no creator ever achieved," he said. "You united wrath and mercy, mortality and eternity. The architects called you anomalies. I call you the truth of creation." The admiral smiled faintly. "Then the truth needs to learn to live without war." Beyond the fortress, in the vast openness between galaxies, humanity began to spread again, but differently this time. No conquests. No dominance. The fleets became custodians of balance. The once feared human warships were now carriers of light and memory. Their weapons were sealed, their cores repurposed to terraform the ruins of worlds shattered during the Great Convergence. Driva stood on one such world, her boots sinking into soil newly born from ash. The wind carried warmth, and in the distance, strange crystalline trees rose, glowing faintly with energy drawn from the Nexus lattice. She knelt, touching one. "We made life," she whispered. "Not through fire, but through forgiveness." Her ship's AI, ancient and loyal, responded softly, "Captain, are we gods now?" She smiled. "No. Just humans who finally learned why gods fail." Across the newly reborn sectors of the galaxy, fragments of the old alien civilizations emerged. Survivors of once enemy species, Krell, Vorn, Tellians, approached the human colonies in disbelief. They expected vengeance, subjugation, domination. Instead, they were met with open arms, shared technology, shared warmth. A Krell leader bowed before a human envoy. "You could have erased us. You chose to rebuild." The envoy, a young man with the crest of the Ecliptic fleet, replied, "Because the only victory worth having is one that outlives war." In the ancient ruins of the Vorn Empire, children of every race played beneath skies reborn. They didn't know the words, architects, or ascended. They only knew the new constellations shining above them, patterns shaped like hands, like wings, like hearts. But far from the laughter, deep within the ecliptic fortress, something stirred. The Nexus heart pulsed quietly, its golden-black surface shimmering with balance. But buried within that light, a faint shimmer of gray began to move. A whisper. A thought. Wrath stood before it, watching. He could feel the echo of something vast and ancient still lingering. The architects were gone, but their pattern, their blueprint of perfection, had not fully vanished. It was alive in the structure of the galaxy itself. He turned as Kerr approached. "It's not over, is it?" the Admiral asked. Wrath shook his head slowly. "No. The architects built the lattice to be eternal. They may be gone, but their law, the idea that order must always suppress chaos, still sleeps beneath creation. One day, it might wake again." Kerr smiled grimly. "Then humanity will be ready. We've fought gods before." Wrath regarded him with something almost human, pride. "And this time, you'll fight not for dominance, but for balance." Perhaps that's what even the architects never understood. In the centuries that followed, the galaxy thrived under human guidance. The Nexus network became the great spine of the new cosmos, linking minds, hearts, and worlds. Wars ceased not because fear controlled them, but because humanity's legacy had become too luminous to forget. The words, "never attack the humans," turned from warning into proverb, then into myth. Children on distant worlds repeated it in awe, not fear, because the humans had become something greater than wrath. They had become memory itself. Eons later, when the stars began to age and the galaxies drifted farther apart, humanity, now scattered and ascended across countless planes of existence, looked back toward the center of creation. The ecliptic fortress still floated there, bathed in eternal light, surrounded by quiet stars. Within its heart, the last human mind, a fusion of all who came before, dreamed one final dream. In that dream, Earth's oceans shimmered. The cities hummed with laughter. The night sky glowed with stars that had names again. And there were no wars, no enemies, only wonder. Then, as the dream ended, the fortress released a final pulse of light across the universe. It spread silently, passing through galaxies, through dimensions, through time itself. Everywhere it touched, life awakened a little brighter, a little kinder, a little more human. And when the final star burned out, the echo of that light whispered across the empty void, soft, eternal, unending. They warned the stars never to attack the humans. Now, even the stars kneel to remember why.